of Denver with more than a 10-minute wait. And this is what a 40-minute line looks like. There are less than 50 people in this line, but they said they honestly really don't mind. It's not that cold out here. Some of them said they were excited to actually be here and vote in person. There are some first-time voters here, and one person told me the feeling that she has waiting in line is nerve-wracking. That's what she's feeling, because she just says it's such an important day. Kyle?
All right, Katie Eastman on the west side for us. Thank you. So Denver accounts for about 1 in 10 ballots that have been turned in so far statewide. Our Noel Brennan's at the city's election headquarters, where, Noel, the votes have already been counted as they came in, but nobody there is supposed to know the total.
Right, Kyle. So those votes here in Denver have been counted for the past week and a half or so, and they are going to be tabulated. The results will be tabulated starting at 7 o'clock tonight. Behind me, we've got election judges that are hard at work here. They are taking every single ballot that comes in here, and they're folding them, they're flattening them as they come in, just one step of the process before they're counted and then eventually tabulated tonight. We know from the Colorado Secretary of State's office, as of 4 o'clock tonight, more than 3.1 million ballots had been returned. We're expecting an update from them shortly. Expect that number to go up, Kyle. About 80% turnout right now for active voters who are registered in the state.
It's absolutely astonishing. We've already surpassed Colorado's voter turnout for 2016, last presidential election year. Noel Brennan keeping an eye on things for us at Denver's elections headquarters. Thank you, Noel. So we'll be continuing to join you during NBC's coverage every half hour or so. Once the polls close at 7 o'clock, we'll be live commercial-free on Channel 20 KTVD with local results and analysis. And we'll also keep you updated on the national picture. But for now, we return you to NBC's coverage of Decision 2020.
All right, Steve Steger alongside Anusha Roy. Thank you for coming in and seeing us and hanging out with us online. Coming to you from my home office, where I have spent the better part of 6 months working, and Anusha coming from her home office as well.
Yep. The brick wall making an election night appearance today. So thank you guys for joining us. We are going to be going over some of the propositions that Steve and I are going to be keeping an eye on throughout the night. Steve, we can start with you with what's at the top of your list that you're keeping tabs on today.
So to me, I've been assigned to cover things that impact your finances. And so we've been looking at statewide ballot initiatives that are going to impact your finances. The biggest, perhaps, and the most confusing is Amendment B. And if you voted already, you know what I mean, because Amendment B is tremendously confusing if you don't understand how property taxes work. What it would do is repeal a couple-decade-old law called the Gallagher Amendment, and that locks property tax assessment rates at certain levels for residential property and for commercial property. Residential property is 45%. Commercial property is 55%. Now, commercial property has been fixed at 29% assessed value. So let me break this down a better way. When you look at the 45-55 split, it means that of all the property tax assessed in the state, 45% of it has to come from residences, 55% has to come from commercial businesses. Now, this was passed back during a time when residential property tax assessments were locked in the 30s, almost nearing 40% range. Since then, to keep up with that split, residential property tax assessment rates have gone down as the value of property has gone up. Follow me? Anyway, we're going to talk a bit about that tonight. So I'm going to be following that, the latest poll that we looked at. Do you follow me, Anusha? Do you catch?
Oh, yeah.
You understand any of that?
Listen, I sat scratching my head while I was voting. Like, oh my gosh, this is so confusing.
I've heard that from so many people when I try to explain it to them, and perhaps it's just because I'm a terrible explainer. But if you understand how property taxes work, you have the value of your property, and what you are taxed on is the assessable value or assessed value of your property, which is set by that assessment rate. Right now, it's right around 7% for a residential property. If Gallagher remains, that number would go likely down next year to try to keep up with that 55-45 split. And so the opponents of this have sold it as a tax increase because you're likely going to see a lower assessment rate next year, which means you would likely be paying less in property taxes. Anyway, we're going to follow that. 61% of people in our poll from October said that they did not know how they were going to vote on this. So it's going to be interesting to watch tonight whether or not that confusion comes into play. Another thing I'm going to watch relating to Gallagher, there are several communities, Broomfield included, that are asking their voters whether or not they can adjust their mill levies. That's another way property tax is assessed. So you've got your value of your home, multiply that by the assessed value of 7%. Then you multiply that assessed value by mill levies in wherever you live. Broomfield is looking at potentially asking its voters if it can float mill levies to keep up with the level of property tax collection that they have right now. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Several other communities are doing that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's so important. And I know it was so confusing to people. So glad that we still get a chance to kind of break it down for people and keep understanding it because there's still a half hour left to vote in Colorado, you know? So we're at 6:30.
Yeah. You never know. Maybe somebody was listening to that awful explanation I just gave and said, you know what? Now I get it. I'm going to go to the polls and vote because Amendment B was the one thing that was holding me back. Yeah.
Just in the nick of time, Steve.
I'm going to try to hop into the Facebook Live and see if we have any comments that I can answer some questions. Anusha, take it away.
All right. So we Steve and I decided to split up the propositions. He was doing more of the financial side. I was doing some of the more social issues. Chances are a lot of you have seen the political ads for Proposition 115. I'm just going to pull up my notes here. This is the one where a yes vote would prohibit abortion after 22 weeks unless it was necessary to save the pregnant woman's life. A physician performing an abortion after 22 weeks, if this is passed, would be subject to a fine anywhere from $500 to $5,000. The woman, the patient, would not get in trouble, would not face any kind of criminal charges for this. A no vote in this situation would basically maintain state law, and that allows an abortion to be legal at any point in the pregnancy in Colorado. And Colorado is one of 7 states that allows that. So the reasons that the people who are supporters of Proposition 115 are saying that a fetus can live outside of the womb at 22 weeks, those who are against it are saying that there's no exceptions for rape or incest or for any issues with the woman's health that may not be immediate. It also is concerned about any kind of diagnosis that may happen later in a pregnancy. So that is up for vote. And if it feels familiar, part of the reason could be that Colorado voters have been asked about abortion before, actually 3 times in the last 12 years. And in that instance, though, voters were asked to define a fetus as a person, and it was rejected 3 times. So this question is very different. And again, we're going to be keeping an eye on as to what voters ultimately are deciding tonight.
Another interesting thing to watch. I did not. I see a lot of political rhetoric, which we probably shouldn't address because it's, it's all about the partisanism right now. But one of the things you mentioned, the previous votes on abortion in Colorado, something I'm looking at tonight, looking at financial issues, is how the state tends to vote on tax issues. And one of the things that we've noticed is when the state goes statewide with something like this, we saw this in 2018 with a potential tax increase. That voters tend to reject those. Yet when it's on the local level, voters tend to be more favorable of that. Right where I am right now in Centennial, the Cherry Creek Schools is asking the voters for a mill levy increase to pay for a budget shortfall within the district. Those kinds of proposals tend to pass a lot better in the state of, or pass a lot more in the state of Colorado than something that goes before all of the voters in the state. What'll be interesting this year is all of the, aside from a proposition that asks if you want to decrease your income tax percentage, most of the things don't directly point to an impact. Like Amendment B, your property tax rates would remain the same if it passed, Now, next year they would go down if it fails,
Hmm.
but they would remain the same as they are right now. And the other thing I'm looking at is Proposition EE, which is a cigarette tax. It increases the tax on cigarettes, the tax on tobacco. It creates a new tax on nicotine and vaping products, which hadn't had a tax before. It'll be interesting to see what happens there, because this is not something that impacts every single Colorado voter. It impacts a specific group of people, whether or not the voters who tend to reject anything in the big all capital letters that have anything to do with Tabor, whether or not they'll go for something like that.
Yeah, it's like the vaping industry is very interesting about how rules and taxations around it have developed over the years, especially because it's a relatively newer industry. Kind of going off of what you were saying, Steve, talking about the local issues, one of the things that we are going to be keeping an eye on is 2B. So to be very clear, this is specifically for Denver, and it's asking voters to increase the sales tax by around 2.5 cents for every $10. And that money would go towards different resources for those experiencing homelessness. It could be anything from shelter to COVID prevention, mental health access, or even substance abuse treatment. And so one of the things that people who are for this are saying is that COVID-19 has kind of exasperated this issue. One of the stats they shared was that since March of this year, shelter capacity has gone down by 1,200 beds, and that's because of social distancing. And they said another concern is about, people in Denver losing their jobs, unemployment, being vulnerable, and that's why they're hoping that voters will approve this sales tax increase. The estimates are that it could bring in around $40 million that first year. Again, that number could change because of COVID-19. Those against it, there's not really an organized group against it at this point, but there's definitely concerns about it. One being, can people at this time and age, with everything that's happening with COVID and unemployment, can they afford an increase in sales taxes? How is this going to impact our businesses? And the other point that people are concerned about that they voiced previous to today is the city spending the money on addressing the issue of homelessness? Are they spending that money efficiently? Is it effective? And they're saying that when the government or nonprofits are asking taxpayers to pay more, that there needs to be scrutiny. So, 2B, we're talking about ballot measure 2B here specifically for Denver, and we'll have to see which way voters decide they want to go tonight.
Yeah, it should be interesting to watch that play out, especially when you go back to the repeal of the urban camping ban, which I believe was in 2018 or was on 2018's ballot in Denver. One of the things that the opponents or the proponents for keeping the ban and the opponents of the ballot initiative to allow people to stay on the streets, one of their arguments was this isn't the right way to do this. We need to focus on other ways. And there were a lot of questions back then about whether or not there would be a solution, whether or not this was just a ploy to defeat this attempt to repeal the urban camping ban, and whether or not anyone would come to the table with some ideas. So this is something concrete that voters in Denver might be able to do to try to help with that issue. It'll be interesting to see how Denver voters roll on that. I don't see any questions. I see a lot of rah-rah, sis, boom, bah partisanship, which is awesome. It's election day. We will keep an eye on all of this. I know that our producer Amanda just texted. I'm not sure if we need to. We need to keep rolling. Oh, you got. This is great. This is a fun part of doing this through the phone. We're good.
I think we're good. I think we got the thumbs up.
Okay.
I think.
Good. Hey, you know what? This was kind of fun. We should do this throughout the night. This is cool. I like it.
We could. This is great. I loved it, and it's nice to see you, Steve. I never get to see your face anymore, so it's nice.
We work on completely opposite sides of the clock now, so it is good to kind of hang out with you and chill. We should do the Zoom thing more often so we can hang out. Right? Our desks are right next to each other at work.
Yeah, seriously. I used to see you all the time, and all of a sudden, it's like I never see Steve anymore. So
I know.
All right.
So good to see you. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you later.